Hello. Oh,
Hello,
go ahead.
everyone. Hi. Oh, Dayna, why don't you
Hi.
start us off?
No, that's fine. Hi, everyone. This is the End Zone Scoop. I am so sorry that we had some technical difficulties today. Just some little glitches that happen. I swear it's the new year, right? It's thrown everything off just a little bit. It's been
Absolutely.
just a little strange. So, but we are here now, and we thank all of you guys for joining us. We are ready for this, right? We have one game left in the regular season, and then we are just gonna, take off into the playoffs. It feels to me like the season just started yesterday. But at the same time, it seems like the season's been going on for 20 years. Like I can't quite decide like how I sit in it. But here, as always, is Liz. We have Shona. We are excited to chat football with you. Liz, how were your holidays?
Do you know, it's been so nice to just have time off, not think about work, spend nice time with family. And yeah, it's been really nice. How about you guys?
Shona, what about you?
Yeah, it's been quite quiet. And then I realized at work the other day, like I just forgot all sense of time and what day it was because I was writing scripts and I was pretending like Friday was Hogmanay when actually it was not Hogmanay at all. It was December 30th. And I was going, and today on Hogmanay, and people are like, Shona, it's not Hogmanay. I'm like,
Oops.
yeah. So it isn't. Like that's tomorrow. Oh well. So
Crazy.
apart from that, yeah, fine. But all sense of time and place has gone completely out the window.
It really has. Like completely.
definitely.
I don't, and I even, worked but then I had like 5 days off and it was just strange. It just throws your whole brain. And then all this football stuff happened because it has been a wild couple of weeks in the NFL. It's been frustrating, right? Because we've been talking all season about how there's been a lot of mediocre games and a lot of teams aren't playing very well. And then out of nowhere, like these teams started playing miraculously. I don't know if you guys watched the Chiefs Raiders game yesterday. That was a great, or I'm sorry, not the Chiefs, the Raiders Niners game yesterday. It was a great game. It was just so fun to watch. It was nutty. And at the same time, I'm like, where the hell has that Raiders team been all year long? Hiding behind Derek Carr, apparently, but I don't think it's the truth, but that's what they're going to say. So we'll see. But I don't know. It's just been kind of crazy. Did you guys get any chance to watch any of the games this last weekend?
So I watched the start of the Niners Raiders game. I watched all the 6 p.m. We're a red zone household, so we basically watched the action, let's face it. And that's amazing. I love that. It's a great way to keep your attention span. So yeah, I feel like I've seen games, but I also feel like then I haven't, if that makes sense.
I actually haven't seen any purely because I was around Andy's family's house and his mum and sister are not into sports at all. Whereas if they're around at our house on New Year's Day, they better prepare for like NFL being on one TV and the English Premier League being on the other because that's how it rolls in our household. But that was not my case yesterday. But if we're doing turnabout next year, it'll be all sports.
Right.
Christmas Eve,
right.
Christmas Eve for us. So we were at my husband's uncle's house. Well, this was Christmas Day, sorry. And yeah, we were basically fighting between watching the NFL or CBBS because there's a baby there with us. It's like, ugh, kids always get their own way around.
God forbid, right? I mean, we got to keep the kids happy. That's just the way it works. But.
My kids will be watching NFL. I'll be like, yeah, my kids want to watch.
Yeah, mine would be too.
I've shoved him in front of the TV. He's happy. There's a ball. That'll do him. Educational.
Right. And this is why I shouldn't have kids.
Oh, no. That means you should, right? We need to have more of that in the world. All right, you guys. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we are at with the NFL playoffs, because really that's all anyone's talking about. I mean, I don't know very many people who thought that last playoff spot in the NFC would come down to the very last week. I mean, that's just really surprising, right? Like, and kind of the same in the AFC. So let's start with the AFC. So the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, the Chargers, and the Ravens have all clinched a playoff, right? Yeah. That means there's 2 spots left. That's crazy, right? Like, I think that's just fascinating. So we have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Let's see. Oh, no, just one. There should just be one left. Is there 7 teams in there now? Anyway, so in the hunt right now, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at 8-8. because we all saw that coming at the beginning of the season. And the Patriots. Like, I don't know that anyone would have called that. There's lots of teams on the bubble and teams that we thought would probably slide into the playoffs pretty easily. We have the Miami Dolphins, the Steelers, and the Titans. There's been a lot of teams eliminated, especially after this last weekend. There was a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Then you look at the NFC, you have the Eagles, the Niners, the Vikings, the Buccaneers managed to win the NFC South by the skin of their teeth. The Cowboys and the Giants. In the hunt right now is only one team, and that is the Seattle Seahawks. On the bubble are two teams, the Lions and the Packers. So there's lots of different and interesting scenarios. Of those teams, though, I want to ask you guys, of the teams that have already clinched, are there any that are surprising to you at all? Have there been any that kind of caught you off guard, or teams that you didn't think would quite be there? Shona, what about you?
No, not really. I feel like the teams that have kind of done it, maybe the Giants. I didn't think they would do that well this year necessarily, because they still have Daniel Jones under center, and I'm still not convinced. I'm sorry. I don't. He just looks too much like Eli Manning for me to think that he's that good enough. So I think actually they are quite surprising, because I was literally like, they are a Saquon Barkley injury away from not making the playoffs, but they seem to have managed to grind it out, and they've clinched a spot now. So I guess out of everyone, they would be my biggest surprise. But generally, no, I think the teams that have made it so far have kind of followed the rhetoric of who I thought would get there. But I feel like it has surprised me, but not making it at all. Like the Rams, for instance, they've just been so injury hit that they're, a Super Bowl winner who is not going to the playoffs. And I don't even remember the last time that actually happened in the NFL, where a Super Bowl team didn't go back to at least the playoffs the next season. But yeah, I guess that would be my two biggest surprises for me. Would be, the Giants and the Rams not making it.
Liz, what about you?
Yeah, the Giants for me, because they had such a good strong start. I'm really glad that they have made it to the playoffs. I'm really happy about that. I guess the one out of all of the ones that surprises me the most is probably the Chargers, but only on the basis that I feel like I've barely seen or heard of them this season compared to other teams. Mm-hmm. However, they're 10-6, so they've clearly done really, really well, and I should have heard them more than I have this season. But yeah, I think that's probably the only one that really surprises me. I think the other thing that surprised me in terms of things like in the hunt, did not think that Seahawks would be there given what we were all, the three of us were saying at the start of the season. Really happily surprised to see that. And then I've never heard of this term, on the bubble. I feel like it's the first time I've ever seen that. Never heard of that. Is that new?
So no, it's not new. So interesting. On the bubble, what it means for those maybe who are listening who don't know all the NFL jargon, because we do know that we have a lot of new NFL fans that watch us. But so what that basically means, in the hunt, means basically you win and you're in with maybe one or two other little things. On the bubble means that you're sitting there and you need a bunch of stuff to fall your way in order to rise up a little bit. And so they're right there on the bubble. Like they lose, they're done. They're out. That's just the way it is. But if all these, the planets align and make everything perfect, in the hunt just means basically that you have a much better chance. So right now, the Seahawks, if the season were to end today, the Seattle Seahawks would be in the playoffs. Right. So that's what in the hunt means if it were to end today. But on the bubble means that if it ended, they wouldn't be, but there's a way for them to get there. So I'm thrilled for the Detroit Lions right now. Like I'm so excited that they're even in there and they get to go try and kick Aaron Rodgers' ass to make it. That's even better. Well,
because they think they're going to get in the playoffs now. Like they're like, oh yeah, look at us. We've now turned it around, and look how brilliant the Packers are. I would just love it. I would love Jared Goff just to be like,
yeah, I just knocked Aaron Rodgers out of the playoffs. That would be amazing. But the interesting thing is that the Lions really need Seattle to lose.
Yeah.
In order for that to happen, which of course is not something that I wish for. But at the same time, I would love to kind of see the Lions. I'm a terrible Seahawks fan. I admit it. But here's the thing. I think that just shows that the grit of a team, especially that team, just clawing and fighting for every point that they can have. And to your point, Liz, about the Chargers, here's the interesting thing about the Chargers. The Chargers at the beginning of the season were the most injury prone, snake bit team out there. They lost player after player after player, their best defensive player. They lost them. So that's why no one was paying attention to them. And they just kind of quietly and slowly beat all these teams to make it up there. This is the Chargers team that I have expected the last couple of years and just didn't get. I'm thrilled for them. I'm so excited for Justin Herbert because I think he deserves it. So I think that this is going to be fun. I think a lot of people really thought the AFC West was going to have at least three teams in the playoffs this year. Obviously, that didn't happen with the Raiders. Oh, so close, Raiders. I was so cheering for you yesterday. And then, of course, with what has happened in Denver. But I'm so excited for the Chargers. So while it's not a surprise to me, it makes me the happiest to see them in the playoffs. And I think that is a really good thing. Now, here are the playoff scenarios. Guys, you're going to have to roll with me here for a minute because there's a lot of scenarios here. I think probably more this year than I've seen in a lot of years, to be honest with you. So to get in the AFC, to get the number one seed, which means home field advantage and a bye week, right? Only the top seed gets a bye week anymore. The Chiefs will clinch with either a win and a Bills loss, or Bills and Bengals. I don't know if that's possible because the game is tonight. So 2 Bills losses. So the Bills would lose tonight and again next week. And the Bengals need to lose 1. So there's a lot of ifs in that one. The Bills will clinch if they win both their next 2 games. If they win at the Bengals, or if they win at the Bengals and the Chiefs lose to Denver. Is that who they just played Denver. Who do they play this next week? Oh, do they play? I can't remember. I'll have to look that up. Or win versus the Patriots and the Chiefs and the Bengals both lose in 18. It gets the Bengals will clinch with the number one seed they have to win both their games and the Chiefs have to lose next week. So that's those 3 teams. I'm sorry. Oh, the Chiefs play the Raiders. Anything is possible after the way I saw them play San Francisco. I'm telling you, anything is possible at this one, and they're going to want to go out on a high. So anyway, there's a lot of scenarios. The Chiefs, the Bills, and the Bengals are just intermeshed, you guys. They are just so intermeshed in getting that number one seed. And the interesting thing is, of course, tonight's game is the Bills versus the Bengals, which is going to be a fantastic game. So
it is.
The only conference still left to be won is the AFC South. The Jaguars and the Titans play each other next week. And so basically whoever wins that game will win the AFC South, either Jaguars or Titans. I'm sorry, the AFC North title, the Bengals clinch with a tie or a win or a tie against the Bills or a win against the Ravens next week. I thought that one was locked up. I was wrong. Oh, because of last night's game. That's why it's not. That's right. And then the number 7 seed wild card, the Patriots will clinch with a win at the Bills. Good luck. Or the Dolphins loss versus the Jets, and the Steelers have to lose. Long shot there. Dolphins will clinch with a win against the Jets and a Patriots loss. Somewhat better odds, maybe. Who knows going to be a quarterback for them next week? We're going to talk about that later in the show. The Steelers will clinch with a win versus the Browns and a Dolphins loss and a Patriots loss. The Jaguars will clinch with a loss versus the Titans and losses by the Dolphins, Patriots, and Steelers. It's very complicated. I hope you guys are following along. Okay, NFC. This one's worse. Are you ready? Okay.
I'm prepared.
All right. The number one seed.
I'm looking at it as well, and I'm like,
it's so confusing. I love this part of this. This is what makes the end of season fun. So the number one seed, well, again, a bye week and a home field advantage. The Eagles will clinch with a winner against the Giants. If they don't win, then the Cowboys loss at the Commanders and a Niners loss against the Cardinals. So really what needs to happen there is the Eagles just need to win next week against the Giants, which is a hard task right now. The Niners will clinch with a win against the Cardinals, and the Eagles lost to the Giants. The Cowboys will clinch that number 1 with a win at the Commanders, an Eagles loss, and a Niners loss. So that's a little bit harder for them. And then the NFC East, the Eagles will clinch with a win, or if the Cowboys lose, the Cowboys will clinch with a win and an Eagles loss. So it's really come down to between those two. And then the number 7. All right, take a breath, people. This is it. The
Here, here.
Packers, if they win next week, they're in, no matter what. And the reason for that, even though if the Seahawks were to win and have the same record, is because it comes down to a conference win. They have won more in-conference games than the Seahawks, so they have to go to the third tiebreaker to figure that one out. So the Packers win, they're in. The Lions will clinch if they win at the Packers and Seattle loses, or if they tie, which we don't, or a tie, or a tie, or a tie. Okay, you ready? It's crazy. Seahawks will clinch with a win against the Rams and a Packers loss. So in order for Seattle to get in that last spot, they have to beat the Rams and the Packers have to lose. Okay. There's a couple tie scenarios in there. We're going to ignore those because they're just way too complicated. So here's the way it is. If you are a non-Packers fan, you want them to lose. That's what it comes down to.
100%.
If you go into the AFC, it's so much more convoluted because so many teams are just right there. But I think the biggest thing out of the AFC is who's going to win that title, the Titans or the Jaguars. That's going to make a huge, huge difference too. So lots of things there. I know that was long and complicated, but hopefully people will have listened and figured it out. I want to ask you guys, and Liz, I'm going to start with you. Of all those teams that are either on the bubble, in the hunt, in the AFC, because I think people who know us, the three of us, they all know that we're Seahawks fans. And so we would, of course, love to see them in. But in the AFC, you have the Jaguars, the Patriots, the Dolphins, Steelers, or Titans. Who do you want to get in?
I think I'd like to see the Jaguars because I feel like they're one of these teams that's been building up year after year to finally get to where they are. And I kind of think, if anyone deserves it out of all of them, it's probably them. Followed closely by Dolphins, just because I really like Waddle.
Fair.
Yeah, for me, Jaguars top of that list for sure.
What about you, Shona?
Do you know what? I really wanted the Dolphins to make the playoffs, but I feel like they don't deserve it for their handling of Tua, which I will get to.
Yeah.
He can't play. So, at the minute, and you guys have and they made him play. And anyway, this is a whole topic. I could get into it. So for me, I would have said them, but I love Mike Tomlin. I've always loved Mike Tomlin. And I think he should really be up for head coach of the year this season, because how in the frick has he got the Steelers to 8-8 and they could also clinch a spot in the playoffs? That they to me are number one for who I would love to see out of the AFC to get through. And then the NFC, I'm just going to say I'm ABP, anyone but Packers.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not as hard as it's between Seahawks, Lions, and Packers. It's like, well, yeah, obviously I love Seahawks, but my second love then is
Seahawks
Lions
don't
and
make
Lions.
it, not the Packers.
Yeah,
Right.
anyone but the Packers. Yeah, exactly. Can't stand the Packers. I don't know why.
That's going to be my hashtag for the weekend.
Here's the thing with me. I don't even care. The Packers can make it. I just don't want Aaron Rodgers to play. And I'm not that girl normally. Here's the thing. I've had enough of him. And I think that I don't want to have to listen to him throughout the playoffs. Just don't want to.
I feel like we used to have this conversation about Brady all the time, didn't we? It's now Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but at least Brady off the field isn't such a knob like Aaron Rodgers. Minus, sorry, my language, but he is just such a twat.
Yeah. Oh my God, on American TV, you can't say that. I love it. All right. So here's the thing. Yeah. So that is it. Right. And so I would be thrilled for the Lions. And here's the thing. I'm not so concerned as a Seahawks fan if the Seahawks make the playoffs. This isn't a Super Bowl team. This isn't a team that is going to make it far into the playoffs. The playoff experience would be wonderful for the young players, but I don't find it necessary. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's kind of where my head is. It would be great for Geno. It would be great for a lot of things, but it's not necessary to really change anything that's going to happen in the next year or so. I think most Seahawks fans have completely shifted their gaze to the draft and those 4 amazingly high draft picks that we have. The interesting thing about the Lions is I think it would make a huge difference for them. And so that's why sometimes I lean a little bit. It's I almost would prefer the Lions to make it because that would change the trajectory of that team completely. I think it would be just so fascinating.
Just AVP, Dayna, AVP.
I'm with you on that. Now on the AFC for me, I would be thrilled. I love Doug Peterson as a head coach. And so I would be thrilled with the Jaguars. They make it. I like the Titans. I don't know that they would go very far, to be quite honest with you, even if they did make it in, but it would be fine for them. And here's the thing. I really wanted the Dolphins to make it. I was very excited for the Dolphins. There's literally no saying who's going to be their quarterback. So I don't know that that's going to make any difference for them at that point. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings. I mean, the Patriots made it in last year. I think I'd be okay with that. So really any of those lower level, the teams that are sitting there on the bubble, I shouldn't say lower level, I'm sorry. I think I would be okay with that for sure. I think that would be really interesting. So it's going to be fun. Next week, next Sunday is going to be Saturday and Sunday, because don't forget, games are on Saturday and Sunday this week.
Wouldn't it be a thing of beauty, though, if the Packers did, get through, right? I hope they don't, but say they did, and then they get to the championship game and then just lose to the Niners again.
It would be hilarious. It would be hilarious.
So
no, not to the Niners. Stop it. Smack your mouth. What are you talking about? No.
Just whoever.
Yeah.
Whoever in the championship game. Because Rodgers is sitting there and he's like, if I get to the Super Bowl, I'm basically winning it. Like, forget everyone else. Aaron Rodgers is like the England media team in the World Cup. They just don't care about any opposition because they think they're the best.
I love it. That makes me so happy. So true. All right. So that's the playoff scenario, you guys. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. All right. So another topic that we wanted to talk about today. So it was announced this week that JJ Watt, he put out that very sweet little picture of his baby, right? And said that, I'm done with football after this season, which, to be honest with you, is 2 seasons longer than I thought he'd be, because I thought after his injury after injury after injury, he'd finally be done. But he's ready to go be a dad, and I can't even wrap my brain around him as a dad, because he'd be so funny. Those Watt brothers are a blast. But I think that it was very sweet. But it does make you think then a little bit about who is then maybe else that is going to be, a retiree, someone that is going to be, might be leaving us. And that's sad, like end of an era sort of a thing. So I wanted to ask you girls, so who do you think, and Liz, I'm going to start with you. Who else do you think could possibly either be a surprise retirement that we're not expecting, or someone who you think they've just kind of called it good?
I think even though I've gone against this pretty much all season, I feel like Tom Brady needs to retire now. I just have this feeling that he just needs to retire. But at the same time, you haven't gone through what you've gone through this season to retire at the end of it. You don't. Like, that's just, so I don't know. So he would be one that I feel like it's probably time, but for him, I don't think it ever will be. Realistically, I don't think it ever will be time for him. But other than that, I mean, been looking at different articles of players and things like this, and I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like,
Brady makes sense.
Not like, I suppose, not major names in a way. So like, yeah, it kind of gets hard to be like, some of them are just been in it for a long time, and it's, just time to pass the buck a little bit. So yeah. I think Aaron Rodgers needs to retire. He needs to go.
Oh, he's not retiring.
Sure. We can hope.
Please. And then, I'm genuinely heartbroken about JJ. Like, he's probably been one of my favorite players over the past few years. He's the only player that I've never seen live. Not the only player, because obviously there's a shitload I've never seen live. But like, he was meant to come to the UK when Texans came. But he was injured, so he didn't. And I cried. I literally, when they were doing the entrance, I cried because I realized he wasn't there. I was like, JJ Watt's not here. It's so sad. So yeah, I'm gutted. And the reason why I love him so much is because of the season they did at Hard Knocks years ago. And so that was the first time I started to like, it's when I was just getting into the NFL as well, but it's the first time I was starting to see like the personalities of players, so who they really are off the field. And like, he's just hilarious, like you say.
Yeah, he is.
Oh my gosh, so funny and so cool and such a good guy. Shona, what about you?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go and don't forget the kickers, because I feel like Mason Crosby from the Packers and Robbie Gould from the 49ers could both retire this year.
Justin Tucker, maybe.
I know Justin Tucker, that would break my heart.
Yeah.
I love him. Gould is because is still playing extremely well. I think he's made 87% of his field goals this season. But he's maybe like 40 going into next season. So like, it's any deterioration can maybe see him move on, or even if they please don't. If they win the Super Bowl, then that could make him, think I'm going to retire and move on. And it's the same for like Mason Crosby. He's 38 years old now, and I would say this season could be arguably his worst. But then players tend to, think, well, that's, not being my great last season. I don't want to hang out my boots quite yet. So I might, continue on. But those two guys, for me, I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them decided to call it quits from the end of the season.
So I think, to be honest with you, the one person that would not surprise me, but I think would have surprised a lot of people if they retired. There's two, but one is Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald actually considered retiring last season. And I think with his injury that has kept him out, a good chunk of this season, with the way the Rams are looking right now, I don't know that he wants to. I don't know him personally, of course, so I'm just, guessing, but I don't know that someone at his age and what he's achieved wants to go down a rebuild mode. I don't know if that was happening. Now, does that mean they would trade him or do something? I don't know that I see him doing that either. It's important to a lot of these players to play for just one team in their entire career. And because he was hinting last year that he was considering it, it wouldn't surprise me if this year he's like, you know what, my body's starting to feel it a little bit. So that one wouldn't shock me. The other one, which I can almost guarantee is going to happen, is Matt Ryan. And the reason why that upsets me so much is because Matt Ryan was an unheralded quarterback for a lot of years in Atlanta. They went to one Super Bowl. They lost horrifically. The way that happened was terrible. But he was a good, consistent, top-level quarterback for a lot of years. And I don't know that he has gotten the credit that is due him. And I think he just stayed in the game 1 year too long. He should have just retired when he left Atlanta and just left it at that. Sadly, then he went to the Colts, which was a disaster for him. So I'm hoping, I would think for him, he'd be like, you know what? I'm out. This is not my jam for sure. So that wouldn't surprise me either. I promise you there's going to be another player that retires that shocks everyone this year, whatever that may be. A lot of these players are really learning that they don't want to put their body through that for 20 years or 15 years, whatever it may be. And the worries about CTE is much bigger than it used to be. And we're seeing players retire earlier. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually someone was like, nope, I'm done. I'm out.
Maybe Zach Wilson. No, kidding.
No, they're keeping him, don't you know? They said, we are not going to trade Zach Wilson. He's the nicest kid around. Well, we have heard that before, my friends. I think that he's out of there.
We have, and then they got traded, so
Right. And I think Derek Carr's going to end up in New York. I have a whole thing about that. But that's where I think he's going to end up. So it'll be interesting. Especially after their loss yesterday. I think that Robert Saleh was like, I need a vet. I need a vet to run all these babies I've got on this team. So
it's in the shape.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but as I mentioned about Matt Ryan, there's a lot of players out there in the league that I think are underrated. Players that have made huge impacts on their team, that maybe aren't getting the credit. There's players that didn't make the Pro Bowl, which, listen, here's the thing. Fans like to blow off the Pro Bowl and say it's just a popularity it's a popularity contest. Oh, people just stuff the ballot. They do. But fan vote only counts for 1/3 of the Pro Bowl votes. The rest goes to players and to coaches. And so what's interesting to me is when there's a player that is supposedly, one of the best and doesn't make the Pro Bowl, I'm always wonder, why don't the other players and coaches like him? That's literally what I think in my head. Like, why don't you like him? But I think that the Pro Bowl has been really great. But you look at people like, well, to be quite honest with you, Tyler Lockett in his career, fantastic player, made the Pro Bowl once as a special teamer, and so I think that that's interesting. Along those lines, it was announced that the NFLPA is doing a special vote, and now I'm forgetting what it was called, but where the players nominate other players that they either in their position or that they play against directly. So wide receivers can vote for wide receivers and cornerbacks, or and linebackers can vote for linebackers and offensive linemen. So they can do that, and then they're named to some all honors team. I love that, because that's when you're going to start to get names that no one's ever heard of before, that pays no attention to. I think that's great. But looking back, you two, at kind of this season, who do you think maybe are some players that haven't gotten the credit that you think that they are due? Liz.
I think Gino proved it more than anything. I mean, he's a player that's kind of obviously hasn't had an opportunity for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming to the season and fucking done really good. Like, I'm really pleased of how he's kind of come into his own. So 100% he's down as the player that had been so underrated. And some people still don't like him, and that's fine. But I thought he'd done really, really well this season. And yeah, fingers crossed how it goes for him.
Well, making the Pro Bowl, I think, has been a huge bump for that.
Yeah.
I think that has made a huge difference. And to be honest with you, the quarterback focused media guys have been all over Gino this year, but in the general public, Lisa, so on the Our Turf Football podcast, Lisa, our Dolphins reporter, can't stand Gino. She can't stand him,
Wow.
thinks he's a terrible quarterback. She's like, he gets way too much credit for what's going on in Seattle. And I just look at her like she's insane. I'm like, hello, you have Tua. But anyway, that's a different conversation. So I think that that's really comeback player. I think that he'll get comeback player of the year. I think it's almost locked in. I think it's gotta be, right? So yeah, that's been really interesting. Shona, what about you?
I would say, like, so for me, like, I've been looking at the Bengals quite a bit because obviously they've managed to, turn out had a terrible start, awful start, and now they're 11-4 and they could easily get the number 1 seed spot. I think a lot of like their wide receiver attention is put on Jamar Chase, but I think their wide receiver team as a whole, like I think like with T Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trent Taylor, I think as well is there.
Mm-hmm.
I think they work really well as a unit, and it's something that utilizes Joe Burrows. And I feel like because the attention is so on Jamar Chase, like the teams are like, that's who I need to target, that's who I need to get to. But his wide receiver team, I think, is really what helps Joe Burrows, get into that end zone. So I think they've been quite underrated. The other guys have been underrated. Jamar Chase is amazing. I'm not saying he isn't, but I feel like a lot of attention is put on him. So it kind of takes away from the other two guys, which is why they're doing so well, I think, personally.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And sometimes I think Joe Burrow is even a little underrated.
Yeah.
They talk about him a lot, but they don't always say, he is what's carrying this team. Last year, you heard that. I mean, honest to God, he carried them to a Super Bowl last year. But this year, you hear other guys getting the credit, which is fair. But I think that sometimes I'm like, we need to bump up the elite level on Joe Burrow just a little bit. If I had to pick a player, I actually, it's a group of players. I would probably pick, and I don't know where they're ranked, but watching them the last couple of games, we got to talk about that offensive line in New York. I think that they are helping Daniel Jones so much.
Oh, yeah.
I think that he finally, and then they got Saquon Barkley running. I think that offensive line, I think they've been pretty beat up, but I've been impressed, that they've gotten Daniel Jones kind of where he is. I will say this about Daniel Jones too, because I think he's a little underrated. So they put out his interceptions over his entire career, and it went from like 35 to 17 the next year, to 10 the next year, to 8 this year. That's an insane improvement. That's going to have a lot to do with him growing as a player. But I also think that has to do with his line, giving him time, making the reads. He's not rushed like he was before. So I think that's important. But I'd give Daniel Jones and his line a lot of credit for that. So for sure. All right, ladies, we actually have some questions today. And so this is from our friend is it Wachira? I hope that's how you say it. He's our friend. He comes and chats with us. We like it. We hope it's a he. I think it's a he. All right. So his first question is about the Seahawks. How does the defense cope with Jordan Brooks being out? Shona.
Ooh, that's a really good question, because I feel like he has been really on it this year for Seattle. He totally came into his own. I think the fact that he's got an ACL injury is a massive, massive, massive loss for them.
It's a big deal going into next year.
Yeah, it's a huge deal going into next year, because I think he's
so late.
Like I said, he's really came into his own this year. So I feel like this might change how they draft potentially. They have like really high picks early on, obviously from the Broncos. Thank you, Russell. So I think it could potentially I think it has more of an impact on next year than it has this year, because even if the Seahawks do make the playoffs, I don't really see them going like that far. It'd be good, like you say, a good experience, but I don't see us like mounting a challenge to get to the Super Bowl. So for me personally, I think it's more on how it affects next season than how it affects this one.
And was it Tanner Muse, I think, is who they had him come in for him. They elevated him from the practice squad. And I think he had an insanely high rating for the game yesterday. So I think for at least, like you said, this season, they're going to be well covered for one more game or into. I think that that's really important. But yeah, he's an important proxy. And talk about underrated. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl too, which breaks my heart because now he won't get to go to the Pro Bowl. I hope that, remember Quandre Diggs just showed up at the Pro Bowl last year, even though he couldn't play. And I loved that. And I'm hoping he does the same because that was a big deal for him. But yeah, I think going into next year, that's going to be the bigger impact. So for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. We kind of talked about this already, but the next question is about the playoffs. Which NFC team deserves the last spot? Are you, Liz? Are you sticking with anybody but the Packers?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Lions. Like, no offense to Seahawks. That's what you said, Shona. Like, I'd love to see it, but realistically, kind of what you said as well, Dayna, in the sense of like, it's just I don't want to say it's not they don't deserve it because they would deserve it, but I just feel like it's got to be the Lions' chance of going to the Super Bowl, right? Like, aren't they the only team still to never have won? Oh yeah, but like I would love if they're gonna do it. I want to see them go all the way to the Super Bowl. Like I just feel like they deserve it. Yeah, they deserve it. Finally.
Well, I think everyone knows what train I'm on.
Yes,
on that train going to the speed highway for the bus. Whatever mode of transport is available for ABP, I will be on it.
That's so funny. But ABP sounds so much like ABD, and that's Angry Doug Baldwin, and so it's like I had the ADB. Yeah. So anyway, so funny.
It works for both.
It works.
I'm sure Doug Baldwin would be annoyed if Packers got through too. So,
by the way, for any Seahawks fans listening, I reposted a podcast, and now I'm skipping. It's all about something. Anyway, I'll repost it. Almost 2 full hours of Doug Baldwin. It was the most amazing interview I've ever listened to in my entire life. And he, honest to God, goes into every detail of the Super Bowl run and all of these other things and everything that happened. Fantastic. Most underrated.
I remember I found his t-shirt in the bargain bin when I was in Seattle, and I was like, who puts Doug Baldwin in the bargain bin? Yeah. I'm like, come on, people.
He's a legend. Doug Baldwin. Okay. So this one, I'm going to give to you, Shona. This is about Jacksonville. 8-8, still in the playoff hunt. Are we slowly witnessing a future contender?
Potentially. I feel like they have a
sit on that fence, Shona. Just sit on the fence. Whatever.
I'm Switzerland right now. No, I don't know. I feel like they have a really great coach, and I've always been a fan. So I feel like they're slowly getting things right, and I feel like Trevor Lawrence is learning from his first season. His first couple of seasons in the NFL, and I feel like he's really progressing as well. I still feel like they have a few holes they need to fix before I would say 100% contender, but they're going in the right direction, and it's kind of nice to see because I just didn't expect it from them. I was just kind of like, the Jaguars, they're not going to do anything. What are you on about? And then like they kind of just slowly like went about their business without people having such a big attention on them, because I feel like there's been for a few years, there's been
especially with Urban Meyer there. Yeah,
like Urban Meyer, and then even before that when they had Blake Bortles as quarterback, and then the Cans were talking about moving them to London. I feel like they've had a lot of like pressure and exposure on them, whereas I don't think they've had that this season, which has kind of allowed them to do what they've been able to do without people being like, wow, the Jaguars, like where they came from.
And the progression over the season has been really impressive. Like the slow progression over the season. And that comes from good coaching. I'm telling you, I'm not trying to diss, Trevor Lawrence. I'm just telling you that just comes from good coaching. Okay. Last question. This is for you, Liz. It's about the Dolphins. Tua's concussions again and again. And I'm giving this to you to Liz on purpose because Shona will keep us an hour here on this one. Tua concussions again and again. Should he call it quits?
See, it's a really tough one, isn't it? So if I was his mum, yeah, he should absolutely quit tomorrow. Family member, sister, whatever, quit tomorrow. But I'm picturing it from his standpoint in that he's still so young that he probably doesn't even consider the importance of like CTA. Still, you'd be in that battle of like, you know you should, but don't want to. You don't want to give up yet. You still have so much to do. So I don't know. I can't see it happening. He should realistically. There's been a bit of a bad one this season. I've never seen it happen like this with any player in previous seasons. So I don't know. He needs some really good advice from some former players who've been there and done it. Because I think there's no one else who can get through to you other than someone who's in a really bad place, I think.
Agreed. Okay, this is what I'm going to say, and then we'll give Shona 2 minutes to go on her soapbox. We will. But here's the thing with this. This is what disturbed me so much. So did you guys hear about how they discovered his concussion? I'm not sure if you guys heard about that. Because it wasn't called during the game.
No, it was next day.
It was the next day, and Hipster Homebrewer was sitting there with him. Again, I call the Dolphins head coach Hipster Homebrewer. It's a long story. Go back and watch our podcast. I explain it. So Hipster Homebrewer was sitting there and with him, and they were going over film the next day, and he could not remember details of plays. He could not remember moments of games. And God love him, Mike McCarthy, who has completely changed my opinion of him over this season. I actually really like him now. Turned and said, go. You are going to be about, there's something not right. And that's how they discovered it. That is scary as hell, because he could have played again this week. If that had not happened, as a mother, like, it sends chills through me. It's just so much. All right, Shona, go. It's all yours.
I feel like someone should just show him a picture of Aaron Hernandez's brain and then show him like what his brain could look like when he's like 27, 28 years old. Because that's the reality of where he's going right now. Obviously I don't think he's going to like turn around and,
such an extreme.
Like, he's not going to start murdering people, but
no,
yeah.
I don't think he's going to start going around murdering people, but
right. But it's scary.
CTE is a big thing, and I think it's not researched enough in the NFL at the moment, and I feel we're making headway with it over here in the UK, like with more neurons disease linked to rugby. Alzheimer's has been linked to football from the 70s with like the older football, and I feel like the same needs to be done more in the NFL. It's not just even about Tua anymore. It's about all these young guys coming in, and yes, they're going to be hungry and they want to play, and they're going to be like, I can play. I want to play the rest of the season. Tua's actually came out and said he wants to come out and play the rest of the season. There has to be a point, and I've said this before, where the Dolphins are like, you can't play. It doesn't
You're
matter.
done for the season. Your brain is going to heal until camp. That's just the way it is.
That's the way it should be. And if Dolphins do actually play them, it sits so uneasy with me, because I feel like they've got no care for the kid. Like, that's why we feel like if they played him, because there has to be a point where you have to be like, I understand you want to play Tua, but you can't play. And I know he's young right now, but like, you get to the stage of your life where you start thinking of things outside of football. Like, if you look at Andrew Luck, like, he retired early because he wanted to make sure he was still around for his kids and was able to provide a life for them. Obviously Tua's not thinking about that right now, but it could be a possibility that he has this for for the future. And I'm coming off my soapbox now. I just feel that I don't think he's going to leave. I don't think he should leave, but I think he needs to sit out a bit, and he needs to go through like major safety protocols and checks before next season to make sure that he is okay if he's going to play, because one hit and that could be it. Could be catastrophic.
So interestingly enough, there's a lot of Dolphins fans right now who really think that he has played his last snap for the Dolphins, period. They really think that the Dolphins are going to try and make a run for Lamar Jackson, which is fascinating to me, because I think the Ravens are just going to tag him. So that's a conversation we're going to have in the offseason, and during the playoffs. But I find that interesting that the fans have just given up on him. And it's like, you realize he just gave his brain for you guys. Like, seriously, it's crazy.
I feel like you can't, I would never give up on the kid, because obviously he was playing exceptionally. Like we said, Tua has to prove himself this year to stamp his authority as the Dolphins quarterback, and he did just that. It's the fact that he's been hit a few too many times, which has led this to happen. Like, so for fans to be like, oh yeah, we now want Jackson, I don't know, that also doesn't sit well with me.
No, I know, me neither. Here's the interesting thing about all of it is that I have a lot of faith now in Hipster Homebrewer, and yes, I know his real name. I do, Mike McDaniels. But here's the thing. I have a lot of faith in him because he sent him, and it's like he does not want to be the coach that ruined this kid. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So, all right, everybody, that's our show. Ladies, any last comments?
Go Lions.
No. I've said ABP too much.
Right, fair enough. And I hope everyone enjoys these last games because I think they're going to be good. And I think the Raiders are going to try really hard to play spoiler to the Chiefs getting that number one. I can't wait to watch that game.
I would love that.
It's the Saturday afternoon game. I can't wait to watch.
Like the Bills are like, I don't know, who do I want to be number one seed? I don't know. Bills or Bengals.
Go Bills. Go Bills. All right, everyone. We will see you guys again. We will be back after the first week of playoffs have gone off. So that'll be really fun to chat.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone have a great night.
Bye guys.
Bye.